On June 2nd, 2025, just 3 days after celebrating her 17th birthday, with nearly 1 million followers watching, Sana Ysef posted her final video to TikTok. She was smiling, radiant, full of dreams. A medical student from the mountains of Chitral, who'd built an empire of hope for young Pakistani girls. By sunset that same day, she would be dead, shot twice in the chest, in her own home, while her mother stood helpless, just rooms away. The man who pulled the trigger, someone she'd rejected, again, and again, and again. This is the story of how a single word, no, became a death sentence. Islamabad, Pakistan's capital, sits at the foothills of the Himalayas, a city of wide boulevards, modern architecture, and the promise of progress. In Sector G13 Anawan, one of the more affluent neighborhoods, families feel safe, secure, protected. It's the kind of place where parents believe their daughters can pursue dreams without fear. And Sana Ysef? She was living proof that those dreams could come true. She wasn't just another teenager with a phone and an internet connection. Sana was different. Born and raised in Chitral, a remote mountainous region in northwestern Pakistan, she carried her culture like a badge of honor. While other influencers chased trends and viral dances, Sana used her platform to promote Chitrali traditions, traditional clothing, and most importantly, girls' education. She wasn't just creating content, she was creating change. By 17, she'd amassed nearly 1 million followers across TikTok and Instagram. But here's what made Sana truly special. She gave back. The money she earned from brand deals, she used it to help underprivileged girls get an education. The designer clothes companies sent her, she donated them to those who needed them more. Her father would later tell reporters that Sana was very brave. But those who knew her understood it went deeper than courage. She had conviction, purpose, a belief that her voice could make the world better. But the internet is a double-edged sword. For every 100 people who admired Sana's mission, there was someone watching with different intentions entirely. 320 kilometers away, in the industrial city of Islamabad, lived a 22-year-old man named Umar Hayat. Unemployed, high school education only, from a lower middle-income family with no real prospects. And somewhere in the endless scroll of TikTok videos, he found Sana Ysef. We don't know exactly when he first messaged her. We don't know what those early conversations looked like, but what we do know, from police investigation files and recovered phone records, is that for approximately 1 year, Umar Hayat tried to establish a romantic relationship with Sana. And for 1 year, she rejected him. At first, it was probably easy to ignore. Another message request among thousands. Another stranger thinking proximity through a screen meant connection. But Umar didn't stop. When she ignored his messages, what investigators would later call cellular rejection, he became more persistent, more desperate, more convinced that if he just tried harder, if he could just meet her in person, she would change her mind. Here's the thing about obsession. It doesn't announce itself with warning signs and flashing lights. It builds slowly, quietly, like water behind a dam. Each unanswered message becomes evidence of conspiracy. Each no becomes a challenge rather than a boundary. And for men raised in cultures where a woman's refusal is seen as negotiable, rejection doesn't compute. It festers. By late May 2025, something shifted in Umar Hayat's mind. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was rage, or maybe it was the cold calculation of someone who decided that if he couldn't have Sana's affection, no one would. On May 28th, 1 day before Sana's 17th birthday, Hayat boarded transportation from Faisalabad to Islamabad, 320 kilometers. a journey that takes roughly 5 to 6 hours by road. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. He knew where she lived. He knew her routine. And he had one goal: to see her face to face. Meanwhile, Sana was celebrating. On May 29th, she posted birthday content to her followers, smiling, grateful, surrounded by family love. She had no idea that somewhere in Islamabad, a man she'd rejected was waiting, watching, planning his next move. The next 3 days must have been a nightmare for Hayat. Imagine traveling all that distance, fueled by delusion and entitlement, only to be rejected again and again. According to police reconstruction, he spent multiple days attempting to meet Sana. He called, he messaged, he likely showed up at places he thought she'd be. And every single time, the answer was the same: no. But here's what makes this case so chilling. At no point did Umar Hayat accept that answer. At no point did he think, maybe I should leave her alone. Instead, on June 2nd, 2025, as the afternoon sun began its descent over Islamabad, he made a different choice entirely. It was just after 5 in the evening when Umar Hayat approached the Yousaf family home in Sector G13-1. Inside, Sana was with her mother and her paternal aunt, 3 generations of women in the safety of their own space. The kind of domestic scene that should be sacred, untouchable. But safety is an illusion when obsession has a gun. Hayat didn't knock. He didn't wait to be invited. He forced his way through the entrance, and in those first few seconds, Sana must have known exactly what was about to happen. There's a moment in every crime like this, a split second, where the victim's eyes meet the perpetrator's, and they understand that all the rejections, all the boundaries, all the no's have led to this. The aunt heard him first. Footsteps too heavy, too urgent, a voice too angry. She turned and saw a stranger in their home, and before she could react, Hayat raised the pistol. 2 shots, point-blank range. Both bullets tore through Sana's chest. Here's the thing about gunshots in real life. They don't sound like they do in movies. Depending on the weapon and the environment, they can be muffled, almost underwhelming. The aunt would later tell investigators she thought it was a balloon popping at first. Just a harmless noise, a birthday party left over. It took her brain precious seconds to process what her eyes were seeing. Sana, crumpling, blood spreading across fabric, life draining in real time. And then Hayat turned the gun on the aunt. He pulled the trigger. But this time, in what can only be described as a miracle or a malfunction, the gun didn't fire. It jammed. Click. Nothing. For a moment, time suspended. Hayat stared at the weapon. The aunt stared at Hayat, and in that frozen second, she made a choice. Survive. She screamed. She ran. She alerted Sana's mother, who was somewhere else in the house, unaware that her daughter had just been murdered mere rooms away. Hayat could have stayed. He could have tried to fix the gun, but he didn't. Instead, he grabbed Sana's mobile phone, the very device that contained evidence of his year-long harassment, his obsessive messages, her clear rejections, and fled into the Islamabad evening. By the time Sana's mother reached her, the 17-year-old was still breathing, but barely. They rushed her to Pakistan Institute of Medical Sciences, PIMS, one of the country's top hospitals. Doctors tried everything, but 2 bullets to the chest at that range, with that level of internal damage? Some wounds are simply too catastrophic. Sana Ysef was pronounced dead that evening, 3 days after her 17th birthday, 3 days after posting videos full of joy and hope, 3 days after believing the world was hers to change. When Islamabad Police Inspector General Syed Ali Nasir Rizvi received word of the shooting, his first thought was honor killing. In Pakistan, hundreds of women are murdered each year by their own family members, fathers, brothers, cousins, who believe the woman has brought shame to the family. It's horrific, but it's also statistically common. Initial reports suggested a relative might be involved, and investigators prepared themselves for yet another case of familial violence. But as they dug deeper, something didn't fit. Sana's family was devastated. Her father couldn't speak without breaking down. Her mother was catatonic with grief. Her aunt, the woman who'd nearly been shot herself, gave a description of the killer that didn't match anyone in their family circle. And when investigators examined Sana's social media presence, they found something else entirely. A young woman who promoted positive values, who celebrated her culture, who had no apparent family conflicts or honor issues. This wasn't about family honor. This was something else. The first break came from security cameras. Islamabad is a heavily monitored city, especially in government sectors. Investigators pulled footage from 113 CCTV cameras across Islamabad and neighboring Punjab province, creating a digital dragnet that would track every movement in the hours surrounding the murder. And there he was, Umar Hayat, a face that didn't belong in the neighborhood, a man who appeared on multiple cameras in the days leading up to June 2nd, lingering, watching, waiting. They tracked his movements backward, following his digital trail from Islamabad all the way to Faisalabad. They identified where he'd been staying, who he'd contacted, what routes he'd taken. But the most damning evidence came from Sana's recovered phone records. Remember, Hayat had stolen her phone, likely hoping to destroy the evidence of their communication. But what he didn't know was that police could recover those messages from service providers, from backup clouds, from digital footprints that never truly disappear. The messages told a story of escalating desperation. Dozens, maybe hundreds of unanswered attempts. Declarations of love met with silence. Pleas to meet in person, rejected. And finally, in those last days of May, a shift in tone, from begging to demanding to threatening. Inspector General Rizvi would later describe Hayat's progression as moving from cellular rejection to physical rejection. Translation: when Sana blocked him online, he came to find her in person, and when she rejected him face to face, he killed her. In true crime investigations, there's something called the golden hours, that critical window immediately after a crime when evidence is freshest, witnesses' memories are sharpest, and suspects haven't had time to cover their tracks. For the Islamabad police, those golden hours were ticking away. But they worked fast. By combining CCTV analysis with phone records and witness statements from neighbors who'd seen a stranger in the area, they pinpointed Hayat's location, back in Faisalabad, possibly believing he'd gotten away with it. On June 3rd, 2025, just 20 hours after the murder, police arrested Umar Hayat at his residence. They found the murder weapon. They found Sana's stolen phone. And according to initial reports, Hayat confessed. He admitted to the year-long pursuit. He admitted to traveling to Islamabad. He admitted to forcing his way into her home. He admitted to pulling the trigger. Inspector General Rizvi held a press conference that evening, calling Hayat a monster and a cold-blooded murderer. The speed of the arrest was praised. Justice, it seemed, would be swift. But the internet, the same space where Sana had built her platform, where she'd inspired thousands, turned into something far darker. In the hours and days following Sana's murder, something disturbing began to happen online. Mixed in with the tributes, the mourning, the calls for justice, were comments that made your blood run cold. She was asking for it. If she had stayed home instead of seeking attention online, this wouldn't have happened. Another woman who thought she could do whatever she wanted and forgot her place. The Digital Rights Foundation, a Pakistani nonprofit tracking online harassment, documented hundreds of posts celebrating Sana's death. Accounts sharing graphic images of her body. Profiles suggesting that her murder was justified because she wore modern clothing, because she was visible, because she dared to have a voice. One particularly vile comment read, "Engaging young to seek or expose can have serious negative consequences." Translation: young women who seek visibility will face consequences, as if being murdered was somehow a natural outcome of ambition. It wasn't just anonymous trolls. These were verified accounts, real people, men and women alike, perpetuating the idea that Sana Ysef had brought this upon herself. But alongside the hatred came something else: a movement. On June 5, 2025, just 3 days after the murder, women's rights organization Aurat March Islamabad organized a protest outside the National Press Club. Hundreds showed up: students, working women, mothers, domestic workers, activists. They carried banners with messages that would echo across Pakistan, saying, "No is my right. Those who kill in the name of honor are the greatest dishonorable. Women's bodies are not battlegrounds." The protest wasn't just about Sana anymore. It was about every woman who'd been harassed online and dismissed. Every woman who'd been blamed for the violence committed against her. Every woman who'd been told her visibility, her voice, her choices made her responsible for men's actions. Journalist Amber Rahim Shamsi, covering the protests, later said something that cut to the heart of the issue. Social media has amplified women's voices, especially those of young women, who are increasingly educated, politically aware, and unafraid to assert their choices. That visibility and confidence can be unsettling for some men who have been raised to believe their authority and control are unquestionable. In other words, Sana Ysef wasn't killed because she did something wrong. She was killed because she represented everything certain men feared: female autonomy, female success, female power. On September 20th, 2025, more than 3 months after the murder, Umar Hayat appeared before Additional and Sessions Judge Mohammed Afzal Mayoka for formal indictment. He was charged with murder and theft of Sana's mobile phone. And then something surprising happened. Despite his alleged earlier confession, Hayat pleaded not guilty. He claimed the charges were based on falsehood. It's a common legal strategy: deny, delay, hope the system breaks down before you do. Hayat was transferred to Adiala jail on a 14-day judicial remand to facilitate an identification parade, a legal process where witnesses formally identify the suspect. But here's what makes this case particularly haunting. Even with overwhelming evidence, even with CCTV footage and recovered murder weapons and witness testimony, the outcome isn't guaranteed. Pakistan's legal system is notoriously slow. Cases drag on for years. Witnesses disappear. Evidence gets lost. And for families like the Yousafs, every court date becomes a fresh wound. As of late 2025, the case remained in the judicial system, with Sana's family still waiting for the closure they may never truly receive. So, what do we learn from Sana Ysef's story? That talent and kindness aren't armor against violence? That visibility makes women targets? That no is still, somehow, not considered a complete sentence? Maybe all of those things. But here's what I think Sana's case really teaches us. We live in a world where women's empowerment terrifies some people so much that they'd rather see those women dead than autonomous. Where a 17-year-old medical student using social media to promote education is somehow seen as threatening. Where rejection the most basic human right to control your own body, your own choices, your own life, can become a death sentence. Since Sanya's murder, the Digital Rights Foundation has recorded thousands more cases of technology-facilitated gender-based violence in Pakistan. Thousands. And those are just the ones that get reported. For every Sana Ysef whose case makes international news, there are dozens more whose stories die in silence. But here's what gives me hope. The hundreds of women who showed up to protest, the activists who refused to let her name be forgotten, the young girls who still dared post videos, to share their voices, to say no, even when it's dangerous. Because, in the end, Umar Hayat didn't just kill Sana Ysef. He tried to kill what she represented, the idea that women can be loud, visible, powerful, and safe all at the same time. He tried to send a message that stepping outside prescribed roles has consequences. But the message that survived, the one echoing through Pakistan's streets and social media feeds? Saying no is my right, and no amount of violence will silence that truth. Sana Ysef was 17 years old. She had dreams of becoming a doctor. She used her platform to empower others, and she said no to a man who couldn't handle rejection. That shouldn't have been a death sentence. But in Pakistan, in 2025, it was. The case remains ongoing. Umar Hayat awaits trial. And somewhere in Chitral, a family mourns a daughter who deserved so much better than the world gave her.